Warm welcome to everybody here to our panel on media portrayal and gender activism, part of the I Belong conference on feminism by the Goethe Institute and Deutsche Welle Academy. My name is Umama Zillur, and I'll be co-moderating today with Helena here. Helena, do you want to go ahead and say hi to everybody?
Hi, I'm really excited about this panel discussion and be with you all together, having a nice conversation today. And yeah, I'm really excited.
Great. So our kind of thought process for having this panel was to really dig into, it says the title is Media Portrayal of Gender and Activism, but I think when we think about kind of who we are here, all the different identities that we bring, we want to think about the intersectionality of those identities and how that has played in representation in the media of ourselves as individuals, but also, you know, we come from different backgrounds. We have climate justice, we have arts and film, we have literature, we have labor activism. So let's all I would love to hear your thoughts from all your different vantage points of how those experiences has kind of led to the type of representation you've seen for yourself, but also just the general landscape of feminist activists. So I think without taking too much time, I will open up the floor. Whoever wants to go first, please go ahead. What has been your personal experience as an activist in relation to media portrayal and public perception? And when we think about media, I'm also curious about kind of how you think about the distinction between traditional media as well as social media. Floor is open, whoever wants to take a stab at it.
I'll jump in if I may. I first came out with my film in 2010, and the film was received with a lot of negative emotions in Bangladesh because unfortunately the film was misunderstood, and it was an anti-war narrative. And because I was making this film in the context of 1971, it was misunderstood as an anti-nationalist film. And I faced this huge backlash that took place in the blogs mainly, in the social media, and also some in the print media. But it was mostly, the war was mostly waged in the blog sphere. And that was my first film. And I had made shorts before and, you know, screened it at festivals, but this was for the first time I'd made a film which was going to be theatrically released. So I was really dealing with the institution of the censor board or the nation state, the representation of nation state and nationalism in cinema. And the way the film was kind of understood by the audience was also in a very gendered term, because a lot of the discussion in the blog sphere had to do with this narrative about how I was trying to rape the country with the movie. And then in return, how I needed to be raped, so I'm taught a lesson. So there's a lot of gendered violence in that discourse that took place around the film and around myself. And I think, you know, it was a long time ago. It was 12 years ago. And I was really not equipped to deal with it. And I went through a huge trauma, and I actually I became depressed, you know, for 2 years. And it was a lot of effort on my part to kind of come out of it. And also I was called like, oh, she's not a feminist. Like, look at the way she represented her women in pink. How can she be a feminist? And, you know, so like, you know, where I'm really trying to portray women in a particular way, when I'm kind of blamed of sexualizing women, or because I had shown their sexuality, it was kind of understood as, you know, I'm sexualizing them. So it was a very complicated moment. And when you when you talk about this, that's just something that comes to mind.
That is quite moving because there's so many things I would like to go with, to run with. So maybe let's start with 1971, because I was born in 1971. So in a way, independence was always something that my father was following. My father lives in Germany. He comes from Bengal, but he lives in Germany, and I was born in Germany. So he was following that in the media. That was the main theme in the year I was born. Nobody in Germany had ever heard about Bangladesh. Nobody knows anything about that. So in a way, but what they have heard is, oh yeah, people are starving there, and there's so many people living there. I come from North Rhine-Westphalia. There are more people per square meter in North Rhine-Westphalia than Bangladesh, but nobody knows that here. So it's really like it's the ghost in the room all the time. So that's the one thing I think of immediately when you tell that story. And the other thing is, if you are, I mean, I'm obviously a cis woman. So if you're a cis woman and you're in some way in the public, you are accused of not being a feminist when you break with certain stereotypes. But it's also the punishment for that is very often, oh, because you've done that, you should be raped. So that is kind of the so to safeguard women, we're going to rape you. So yeah, that's really going to help. That's very logical. Let's run with that. And that's very good. Thank you. And I was lucky. So the first really hard shitstorm I had, I was a lot older. So in a way, I had already experienced that from friends, from other activists. So I knew kind of what to expect. You never know what to expect, but it was kind of absurd. And I grew up in a time before the internet, so I'd already been online for a long time before I Googled my name for the first time, and that was good. I didn't know what people were writing about me. And I remember that first shitstorm, and somebody told me, oh, it will be over soon and people will know your name afterwards. And that was true. So in a way, it served as a kind of badge of honor. So I was taken more seriously afterwards. But it was, while it was lasting, it was incredibly frightening.
Thank you both for sharing. Something that kind of made me, something that I thought of while you were both sharing is kind of this idea of like acceptable and unacceptable activism. And I think that's something that we definitely noticed during the 2020 anti-rape movement. There's this acceptable form of protesting sexual violence and gender-based violence in Bangladesh. And that acceptable form is very on the sidelines, just holding your placard, not really being loud in your physical presence, in your, vocal presence. And there's this acceptance of pleading, but not an acceptance of demanding for our rights, right? And one of the tools that we used during the movement and one of the big protests was the Bangla version of Rapist in Your Path, which is the Chilean feminist anthem that's kind of been taken up by different feminist movements around the world. So it's called Tui Dhorshok. It was translated by Against Patriarchy, a group of Dhaka University students. So that as a protest tool, very physical, women dancing, women chanting loudly. You can see the anger on their face. They're, really just claiming public space. And we saw, big backlash against not the fact that we were protesting, but the fact that protest came in the form of dancing and chanting, and that too at night. And so there were like all these elements of respectability and what's acceptable as a woman who's protesting gender and sexual violence. So yeah, and I think social media was definitely the nastier end of that. I want to take it to maybe Tony. Do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about your experience regarding media portrayal?
Yeah, I'm just having so many thoughts and reactions by just listening to the discussions that was taking place before, and I guess I just have to start by acknowledging and the reaction just by sharing the reaction that I was having while listening to what Rubaiyat and Mithu was saying. I guess I mean, it's again and again. I think for me, I mean, it's on two layers. One is I've been living in Germany for the last 6 years now. And before that, I grew up in Bangladesh and I was always there. And I think, of course, as a woman, when you grow up in Bangladesh, you always know, I mean, you always know there is a right way to be a woman. And because I grew up in a very culturally and politically active family, my mom is often like also known like as being this girl who went to war disguised as a boy when she was just 18 years old, and then she was always lifelong a women's rights activist, and also that's what she did all her life. But despite that, I'm just sharing that to share that how, despite even with that, you always knew, and especially even more when you're a culturally, politically active woman, you always needed to dress in certain way. You always need to behave in certain way. So certain things are always out, just also because you want to protect yourself already from certain allegations, but at the same time, to keep on having certain respect that's a standard in the social norm. And I was just realizing how, when I went back to Bangladesh recently, I was just realizing, like, even having despite grown up with this political activist and then being also politically active all my life, just this time when I went back, I just realized how misogynistic our society is. It's like the whole society is out against women, and it's just so normal. Even the most progressive people have such inherent like misogynistic trend. It's just absurd. And I think only after having lived outside of that, and then when I went back, and that's not to say that Germany is any different, and that's where the second layer I was having when I was listening to Mithu, that, and then comes that as a woman, so of course there are layers of it, and then how even globally that it's always it's a thing, and how it's easy to then defame you just to talk about violating you, and how it's easy as a weapon. So I don't know, just I was having the strong emotional reaction of rage and a lot of different things. I just wanted to acknowledge that. And my experience with media, I would say in this way, I have been much luckier than others. Probably what my experience has been this in Germany, when I've been active in the German climate movement, and there it was more like how this white gaze has this need to, whenever it's a person of color, there's always this intuitive need to then put a label, this victim labels. It was this, so the incident that had happened was on social media. I was again like made invisible from an action that I was participating in as an activist. So I was more in a power position, but then in the whole narrative, somehow I was made just to be needing to like be someone from Bangladesh. And it's always intuitive, like if I'm from Bangladesh, that has to mean that I left the country being, and I work around climate, that has to mean then my house had been washed away by some flood. But I mean, that's not the case. I mean, it could have been. And also, of course, so that's not about the privilege, but then just to point out the fact that how there is this intuitive need to put on a narrative. And then when I decided to fight back on that, so what was important for me to write this article and to put out my narrative and my story in my terms. And even when I was writing that, it was absolutely crucial for me to make sure that it's not about complaining, so that I don't get to set into again another victim role, even because that's on another layer, right? Like when you say that, hey, you're doing an unjust to me and I'm trying to call you out on that, but then there's this cycle of then ending up in the victim role again. So then for me, it was absolutely important to claim that identity and start by saying that I am saying this to serve you, like to make sure like making you better, but at the same time it's also about like, this is my identity, this is who I am, and it's not this tiny incident that happened to me is not, I refuse to let that define me. And I think that layer in that article also had worked quite powerfully, and that had allowed for me to then afterwards connect with a lot of amazing people, and then kind of having people standing up again and then wanting to speak out their experiences, and also being asked to then talk to different spaces and just start pulling out those curtains around this internalized racism that exists in German societies and even in the most progressive spaces.
Nazma, you have years and years of experience in the activism organizing space, and I'm sure you've seen kind of changes in how the media has changed their perception of you, or also their representation of you when you're on the streets, at the marches, as well as other workers, the labor rights movement organizers. So I would love to hear from you your thoughts on how the media has either helped or not helped your cause.
Thank you. And thank you. I'm also listening others. The media is very complicated issues and complicated area. Since as you know, my background is I was formal garments workers and child labor, and I fight since 90s when I was teenage, when I 14 or 15 years old. So that time the media is only newspaper. So which is when we protest and we raise our voice about our issues in the street. And when this picture come to the newspaper, people knows and we highlighted very big way. So one thing is getting power, but other hand, I was blacklisted because when I wanted to go for job, the factory said, "Oh, you are the leader. We don't want to that kind of people." So that was the things, and long time I need to unemployed, and it's very difficult because me and my mother are working in the factory. So I need to compromise myself because of this. And then the electronic media when it started. I'm not saying all media is same and as like equal. Some of the media is very active and patient. Some of the channel is really hard to help and try to the workers' issues. Even some of the media I found that they are also pushing what their objective and what they want to do. So that is also a lot of time I had a fight, and I have also found media is very racism. Like, because most of the time when I'm going to talk show with the manufacturer or business people, if I'm coming a little bit earlier, I'm sitting in the outside. But when the business people come, immediately they invite them, having coffee, tea. And after that, the business people said, "Oh, you are here, please come and join with us." So this kind of things also happen. Even the question sometimes is very proactive workers, but sometimes also they are said, when workers are protest, when they raise their voice, is this good for the industry, is good for the country? And what they are saying sometimes is very complicated and very difficult is also. In the print media, some of the newspaper really do care and really helpful and supportive. Even sometimes some of the print media also make very caution. And I remember once in a time in 2004, I organized a union in the factory, and factory owner doesn't want. Then there is one newspaper, they were hired and asking to take my interview. The guy was calling me over phone and very irritating and very badly he's asking the question, and which is make me very yelling and shouting and scream. And suddenly he was asking, like, as all my sisters are saying, we have experiences globally and also locally, and we are the garments or other business is export oriented. So we are working locally also with the foreign people, also globally, and we are working with the one of the international organization in here. And he is asking all the time what kind of relation I have with him, why I'm going to work with them, and what type of relation we have. And even sometimes we go and meet in the people in the maybe that in the Hotel Sheraton or somewhere, a coffee shop or somewhere. So, you know, and all of things, and they make me write, and they came to my office like a spy and getting a lot of information. And one day they came and said, we are going to make an article, we need a photo. I said, take the photo, because which newspaper? Said, we took the interview and this is the name. And then I do that. And suddenly he said, can you put because you know that time is a land phone is very popular, and put the phone like this and take, we need one phone because you are busy, and write something. And you know the camera, what is his objective and how he wanted to take the photo. And then it's photo they took and it was published. And I was in Geneva in the WTO conference about the 10 years impact of the multi-fiber agreement. And suddenly I got the email that this was published, and I found it's really very irritating, very disturbing. When I back to Dhaka, you know, the NSI, the National Security Intelligence, they came to my office and they were asking what kind of work you do, what are you doing, and they are keeping my passport. And every day they observe me, they come to office. And you know, it was very difficult time I was passing. And we have a lot of kind of experience with the media, and how we are, when you are activist as a woman, and when even because you know, it's a classing, and the people, when you are in getting power, because I'm not like a middle class or upper class or lower middle class also, because I came from very working class. So it is also challenging a lot of time in my life and my threat. And if I'm saying about the social media, because most of the article and the things, oh, even once I was in Ireland, a very young age, and because they were asking about the child labor and issues. So there was an article, people was asking me about the boycott. So I said, boycott is not because at that time I was not very expert, the international issues. So that article came, the young workers talking about the exploitation and consumer, the people are asking about the boycott, and she was asking to boycott the issues. And you know what is the boycott? Even I don't know that much word even very well. And I said, this job is very important for us. We don't have alternate job. But that means I'm not asking for the boycott. But you know, when it's come to Bangladesh, it was also very difficult time I was facing with the business community, government, and everywhere. So it's very complicated to freedom of expression, the freedom of talk, and freedom of movement. Everything is very difficult. Even when we're talking about our independent, our culture, our value, our workers, our sex, all kind of issues. So it is not that easy tasks, but easy things. But sometimes, which is my understood, the media always thinking, and media is always thought they are the right, and they are the spirit for us, and we should listen them. But the theory and logic, they should listen us, because they are working for in general people, and in general objective and aims, and the good environment and climate. But that is very difficult. But later on I will talk about the social media. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nazma Appa. Something that I was thinking of when both of you were sharing was how much kind of this fear of the backlash from media, or just in general society, leads to us even before we see the portrayal and the representation, causes us to self-censor ourselves. And I definitely think it has played a role in how I mean, it makes me definitely think twice when I'm out in public space and I'm putting myself there, and I know there will be pictures taken, there will be journalists, there will be, you know, general public taking photos, videos, and then anticipating that backlash. How do I kind of change my behavior, and kind of, yeah, so that was kind of what I was thinking about. Helena, over to you.
So, I mean, I think we have like really already touched that topic, but I think what I want to lead into is more the simplification of identity politics and our identities, not only in activism, but I mean, we know this in all parts of life, that, you know, like to one person's identity, there are so many facets. But I think what happens often in conversation encounters is that it's narrowed down to categories that are very simple to understand, right? And I mean, gender and race would be some, but talking about intersectionality now for so many years in different discourses, I think we know by now there's so many categories, so many things that make a person. And yeah, I think we have faced this all in different kind of contexts, but I think it's very prominent with the media, no? That you can see like how is reported about an issue, how is talked about an issue, how is talked about gender. And I would really like to know from your side, what do you think, like, what are these kind of categories that work very easily for the media, very easily in a representation of a movement? And what role does this actually play in the polarization of what people think, right? So what have you faced, no, personally?
Well, I feel a bit bad because I've got the feeling, and what Nazma said was so important. So, but just to answer your question, maybe we can come back to you later. Is there are these kind of categories. So even when we challenge them, like with gender, for example. So when we started to talk about sexual violence, then we do it through the lens of gender. So the attributes, gender stereotypes, gender roles. So we are talking about, oh, we've got to safeguard women from sexuality. And no, we want sexual self-determination. That is something else. I don't want to chaperone. Thank you. And so in a way, and I noticed that with myself, obviously. I am part of the media, both. So social media, obviously, but I'm a journalist, so I'm a broadcaster, and I noticed, especially going back, because then you can see it. You can't see it; it's just done. That you operate with these roles, and obviously race plays the role in that too. And so we kind of, because we don't talk about certain themes. And when we start talking about them, we start to reproduce all these stereotypes. And I think at the same time, it's so important to talk about it. We've got to also look at what we're reproducing there, and because that is a danger in itself.
I think Tonny and Rubaiyat, I think you also talked about this issue actually. And Tonny, you said like, it's easy, no easy category as a weapon. No, and I think that really resonated with me when you said that, because I think these categories, they become a weapon because it's so easy to narrow our movements down, you know, and not see all the diversity of these movements too. And then it's really easy to kind of say, okay, you know, this is like a women's movement, you know, but I mean, there's so many aspects to that, right? I mean, like we talked, like Nazma talked a lot about like class, no, like, but these things are really not addressed. That's what I feel, you know, when it comes to media portrayals of certain movements.
And sometimes, oh no,
Sorry, go ahead.
Tonny,
No, go ahead.
Yeah, sometimes also like when like we are, for example, I'm a labor activist, like which is Umama told about we had a big protest about the rape case. And when the media also sometimes found, oh, you are there. So what's the wrong? Because this is our job, because we are suffer, we have problem, and that is our work together. And some of the journalists also said, very good, well done, because you need also this area, because your voice is more important than others. So, you know, we have a lot of mixing and mixed idea and thought. And even the media, it's not only that, because my experience, I have experience work with the female media people as well as the men people. Also, I didn't get that there is a woman and she's doing special favor or special things for us, or making better, or writing different article, because it's also sometimes challenges. Even sometimes men are cooperative and help. So, you know, we don't know who is helpful and who is not helpful also for us. Because, for example, if we talk about the two journalists, the couples who was killed, Shagor and Rooney, because when they have killed and they have a lot of issue, this journalism, what they did, demonstration, talk show, and we didn't see they are actively fight for their colleague and comrade was killed. But when we talk something about our workers, our issue, or women's issue, gender issues, or what kind of environment, what type of things we have to do, that time they are always pushing, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do that. But why they are doing? Because it's not only we have to raise our voice and we have to do our thing, because it is all of our job. If there is an inequality, injustice, or murder, or whatever, because we have to be very strong and very patient for everyone, but they are also pushing and doing us to do this and that. And you know, when we are really active on our issue and holding our demand, they are good, but like who are coming to us, the junior level, and who is assignment for this article or this report, they are trying to really hard. But you know, is new liberalization, capitalization, globalization, and militarization, and fundamentalization. And most of them new media, they are business people. They are thinking about the profit. If you goes to the big newspaper, how much the article and how much the advertising. So it is also very complicated to get and hope from them, because day by day, this digitalization, the future war, auto machine, or whatever we said, these things are updating, but day by day declining our rights from the media, because they are not at this much listening from the real things, because they wanted to, where is the flavor or in the profit, and where is the margin, and where is the benefit, and where is the things. So you know, it's very complicated, because I'm not very much good on the English with like you guys, but which is my sense, because real thing, what is your job, you are not doing, but talking me to do your job right or wrong. So many complicated things are going. And when you are woman, and when you are coming from the different class, and when you are active, even when you are wear the what kind of dress, that also they are looking, or you are also wearing that kind of, because this is my life, my body, and what to do, not to do, I have to decide it. But many cases also you are getting a lot of, when I get criticism from the media people, that is very unfortunate.
Tony, I think you had wanted to share something.
Yeah, I was just going to, it's already similar what Nazma said, that it's always also like a thin line, like balancing. There is, of course, power to simplified narration, like it probably cuts through a lot of the noise, and people listens, and then also the media always tries to make it something like where you can hook people. So, and also with labels, it simplifies, so then you know what they're talking about. Okay, they're for some feminist demand, or what are they talking about? Okay, some labor rights demand. So there is power of this labeling, but at the same time, as Helena was saying, that then when this oversimplification, or then at the same time also then trying to be a bit even polemic, like going a bit away, or how do we even then manipulate the truth beyond, like while we try to simplify things, then if we start to also then manipulate the truth, that's where it gets problematic. No, and then and also when you're cutting out nuances, that means you're also then reducing. There's this risk of being reductive and reducing the real people or the real story that you're telling. So I guess it's always this this balance between the two, and then reflecting back what Nazma was saying, then there's a lot of the media has different objective and their own agenda. It's still today, and probably those of you who work in journalism and media knows also that out of 100 outlets, there's probably usually only 1 or 2 that's fighting against the mainstream or fighting against the power or kind of trying to be open source. And then they're always struggling to finance themselves, but then still trying to present certain, like the stories that are closest to the truth or to the people. And then they're always facing different forms of state oppression and such. So I guess it's like a risky terrain, or how to say, not risky, but rather, yeah, it's not straightforward, but I guess that's something that we have to keep raising. And I guess with the media, social media, at least we have certain power now at this point. I think that's also some level of freedom, the citizens' freedom to then be able to put out our narrative. But yeah, these are all of these challenges. I just wanted to share that a bit.
Another things I can share, because before the COVID, mostly the print media always they are taking interview and asking about the industry, women's, and many other issues. So few months they didn't do anything, and suddenly one day they calling me and asking some code, and I said, where did you go last 6 months, because there is no code or nothing. And they are also saying, you know, we are influenced by the business people, and if we write something, they are going to direct to the editor and asking why he or she is writing this, put this code or something. So that is why we have limitation. I said, today you need code because this pandemic, and that is why you are taking that code from us. So we are like a product, we are like an instrument. You can buy, you can sell, you can throw out, whatever you said, because you know you have also the friendship and very close work relation with many of them, and they are also share their limitation, and that is also the things. And the social media things, yeah, we are quite independent. We can post something, you can write something, and during the COVID time, the sexual harassment, all kind of workplace harassment, abuse, and everywhere we were facing in this pandemic situation, even the people are not getting their wages, the returns, all kind of is an injustice going on. I remember there is a business community also, because I went to the talk show and I was strongly raised the issue about the workers' rights violation and the jobless and unhuman things. Even the, you know, the business community also said, who are the people are talking in the talk show and strongly raise their voice. They are creating unrest and they are creating all kind of vandalism. So the government and police should arrest him or her. So, you know, it's so many complicated way we do. And social media, we can post a lot of issues, a lot of things. And also sometimes people are only give some like, or maybe love or care, that kind of things. And sometimes people are, when comment, very appreciated, very few, but most of the time people are comment very irritating. Even they are violating the digital act and law also. And even, you know, sometimes they took our photo and post very different way and put it in the social media, which is they had to know that's how to use the social media, and people need to be know whose picture and how they use and how they misguided, and it is also the crime. So it's also sometimes is very, but in the Twitter and social media, if we do a lot of issues, which is we found support and like or retweet, which is, and I very much happy with that, because when we do the Amazon campaign, because in Bangladesh, we are the biggest campaigner across the world, and which is very popular, and people are more attention and came to us. Even we put a 16 days campaign, gender-based violence and all kind of things, and people come and response with us. So it's also good connection and network with us. And the print media, electronic media, globally and internationally, people refer and getting the big interview, small interview, and which is sometimes is very helpful, but sometimes it's very challenging or your life threatened, because which is, I told you, because I was blacklisted, the NSI was taking my passport and whole life was going to hell, what to do? And people said, don't worry, you have to be brave, you have to be strong, otherwise workers' life, what will be happen. So it is very things. And also the main concept is very problem, because in media, because when we go for the any issues, any areas, so mainly they are prioritized also men because of the patriarchy and fundamental and capitalism is always making different way, because we are working for the business, and it is not only the Bangladesh problem, it's a whole entire system is across the world is problem, because especially the development country like European, American, Australian or Canadian, because they are also prescribed what they want to know, what they wanted to do. Because I have variation work experience with the across the world, and I found sometimes they are also asking that, the garments workers need the job. But yes, we need the job, but what kind of job we want? The slave, the cheap labor, or we need the dignity and better life of the women's workers? And that time, oh, no, it will be take some time, it will be take time or something. Because, the colonization is everywhere, and colonization also controlling the media and their objective. It is, I'm not saying that it's a Bangladesh problem, it's everywhere, because you see in Bangalore, the girls wear the hijab or burqa, whatever, that is also the question. And here, the girls are thinking to protect themselves with the hijab, but it is not. It is more making dangerous also. So we need to be liberal. We need to be very independent, and we need to be very honest ourselves. We should not be hypocrisy way to grow up, because which is, I don't believe we should not do that also. So a lot of issues also, even though we seen in the media, the big multinational also how to selling their hijab to the Europe, America also. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazma.
I just, I was listening to everybody speak, and I'm just coming from the press conference of a film that I'm releasing later this month. And there was only one woman journalist in the whole room, and all the other journalists were men. And these are entertainment journalists. So, as much as I think, yes, we want to talk about intersectionality, but when you're dealing with a situation when there's such a huge imbalance, then I think I just fall back into the category of just being a woman. And I'm called a woman director, like Nari Nirmata, So they define me as a woman director, and that's already like a little box. When they label me as a woman director, then I'm already put into a box that comes with like some preconceived notions. And I think there's a certain violence in that, because then a lot of other parts of my identity is being erased. And similarly, when I'm because I live part of the year in the US, and sometimes people just say, oh, like you're Indian or something, so that's even a greater violence, where they don't know that, they think I'm, like, oh, like you're Indian and let's have some tikka masala, So these are good friends, people I've gone to college with, so I think it's different in different places. When I'm in Bangladesh, the way I'm looked at, and I just go back to what Umama was saying about this sense of kind of self-censorship, because my career started with this huge bang of everybody kind of witch hunting me. And I remember there was a portrait taken of me this journalist came to my home and they took a portrait of me, and I was just wearing what I was wearing, and maybe like a little bit of my cleavage was showing, just like a tiny, tiny bit. And there are comments made in the social media about that. And then I just started like dressing a certain way when I'm doing press in Bangladesh, you know, and I think I kind of defeminize myself in the sense that I will never wear a shari, or I'll never dress like, you know, like this is how I was today for my press. You know, I'm wearing pants and, you know, like I have, this is like, you know, I try to create this look for myself, that in order to be like taken seriously, I have to look a certain way. Because when a male director is going out in the public, he doesn't have to worry about what to wear. But because I'm a woman, when I go out there, I have to kind of think about what will I wear and how will they take me more seriously, because I don't want them to stare at my ass, and I want them to listen to what I'm saying. So I have to kind of package myself in a certain way. So I think for me, at least working here in Bangladesh, very hard for me to get out of that box of just being, I'm a woman, you know, I have to deal with this. And if I'm in the US, then I'm a brown woman and I have to deal with it. Or like a Muslim brown woman, I have to deal with it. So I think it also takes a certain type of kind of evolved state or society where you can deal with a lot of intersectionality. You know, we might be talking about in the classrooms, in the academia, it's a very savvy word now, but I think when I'm working down in the ground, I am kind of pigeonholed. I'm forced to be pigeonholed into these identity of being a woman or a brown woman or a Muslim woman.
And another thing, thank you, Rubaiyat. You are rightly mentioned, and it's not only you. It is, I think we all are facing same problem and same reality in the media and also when you are abroad the same way. Also that another issue also challenges what we found in the working workers, because we are trying to promote grassroots leadership and factory level union leader. So, you know, when the women are very active and strong or something, and sometimes, you know, this social media, they took the girl's face and with the very naked or very ugly kind of photo, and they put it in the social media, and it goes to around to the community, and it's affected their family, it's affected her work, and also it's affected her entire life also. So these kind of things also very much increasing within the social media. And also sometimes the people, even what, you know, I'm working with the workers, and a lot of because my Facebook is like almost like a public, who can ask for friend request. It is men, women, workers, all kind of variation. And I accept many times there, because some of them are mutual friend. And you know, many cases in the messenger, the way they are sending the message, sometimes they are sending the when they call with the video call, and you know, very naked picture and very badly, and sometimes I need to hand over to my man family member, can you talk or deal with this issue? So these kind of things also happen.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that the kind of sexual harassment, if you are a activist and you hold a certain identity, that just kind of is part of the package, which is very unfortunate. Something when Rubaiyat was sharing that I was thinking of was, as feminists, we obviously believe the personal is political, but then, you know, when we're out there on the streets and, you know, or wherever we consider our space to be of, you know, our space of activism, how do we kind of negotiate between, okay, is this now my time to assert my right as an individual to make choices for myself, or do I make a call for the larger cause? Exactly what Rubaiyat was saying. So when I'm also on the street, is it more important right now in this moment for me to be fully myself, or is it more important that they're listening to these 10 demands that we have drafted and they actually pay attention to every single word that we have in our statement? And that, I think, is really, really sad, that is a negotiation that always has to happen for us. And yeah, all right.
And I think we have all made like very toxic experiences, I think, with the media. And I mean, from my personal experience, like now, like when media houses, for example, ask me to give an interview, like about the work I do, about protests, about movements, I feel very hesitant, and I almost move completely away from giving interviews with, especially with media houses, even if they are big, where I know like it's kind of mislabeled or misrepresented. I would really like to know from you how you navigate this, because you all have made these experiences, right? And how do you kind of like work with that, with this kind of mistrust towards certain forms of media that you cannot really influence also what they are writing? Like, how do they portray you? And how do you navigate that? How do you kind of channel, how do you kind of represent yourself? I think it's very, for me personally also, I would love to hear how you handle the situation.
Before we start, I just want to alert everybody that we are almost nearing our 1 hour mark. So just to keep that in mind.
I think Mithu want to talk.
Well, I have made all these toxic experiences, and so by now I notice I'm in a position where when people want to talk to me, I've got the right to say, yeah, but we do it on my terms. So if they do interviews with me, they send them to me first before they're published. And at the beginning, I was incredibly polite, and I only changed very minor things. And now I really rewrite them because I want them to represent what I want to say. And then they say, yeah, but I've recorded it and you said something else. And no, this is my content. And you might have taken the words in some kind of weird order and put them back together, but this is what I want to say. And it's similar even with photos. I mean, there are loads of awful photos of me on the internet, and you can't change that. But nowadays I tell photographers, if you want to publish a photo, you've got to show it to me first, and then I authorize it. And I was very surprised. The other thing is, I used to self-censor myself a lot, and I noticed I'm just not clever enough to do it. So when I self-censor myself, then I never know what will rile people up and what won't. So the next shitstorm is always coming. And that gives you kind of freedom as well. And also realizing you don't just survive them, you survive them when you survive them. There are people who haven't, and that's also important to say, but when you survive them stronger than before, because just because people have heard your name, and it doesn't matter, there is no bad coverage. So as long as people hear your name, that is kind of, in our times, in our economy, we need attention. It's an attention economy, and so it does help.
Yeah, same like Mithu also, because we are also, because all the last lesson learning from the bad experience. So nowadays, because today also I sent another article will be published maybe in Germany. My friend, she was the journalist was asking to her to interview me. So then after she sent me the my interview and said, is this correct, or you wanted to add something? And here also sometimes some newspaper, when they wanted to article, and they said, these are the questions, you can write your own way. That is, but if some journalists take the interview but do their own way, then again we are trying to negotiation and talk with them. This is not the right way, this is the not way, because we cannot avoid, we need media, we need to support them. So we if they write something, its people can listen. If they show something, it is important for us, for society change. But sometimes it goes to very bad way. So, sometimes need to be compromised. For nowadays, especially myself, the electronic media, sometimes even I'm avoiding to go those kind of television. I don't like, I don't want interested to them. And also sometimes the journalists also are creating also some irritating situation. So it's a mixing, but when you are a woman, when you are activist, because always people think different angle and different contrast, because as Rubaiyat is a film director, she has a lot of challenges because she need to work for men and women challenges job. I am a labor activist and male dominating union, male dominating society for everywhere, and they are also looking different angle. So we have challenge and we have obstacle, and we are in between trying to which is accepted, which is not, because it's a very technical and political issues also for us. So but one thing, there is also who are the activists, women's activists from the different layer. We need to be constructive, our commitment and constructive activism, how to make the systemic change, and power should be equally distributed. That is very important, because power is not in our hand, power is not in our, we have a lot of power, but we cannot practice. So systemic change is very important for every layer and everywhere. So that is very important to need to work, everyone.
I can go. I think that, for me, after I had that really bad experience with my first film, I really had to take control. I really felt like, okay, I'm going to create the image that I want of myself, that's portrayed in the media. So I am very careful about what press I do. And I have this rule that if I have an interview, it has to be sent to me before. They have to agree to that term that, okay, you're going to do the interview, but you're going to send me the transcripts. And then once I approve, then you publish it. So I will not do any interviews, and even with the international press or local press, because I think I have also been kind of, especially, like Nazma Appa can relate to this. I just, my film that's coming out is about a union worker's life. So I had to be very careful with how the European media was going to twist that movie. So I really had to make sure that, like, for example, I did an interview with Danish Film Institute, and they made this the headline that I have always been a very angry child or something like that. I was like, no, I don't want you to put that as my tagline, So I think I have to kind of constantly negotiate that this is how I want my portrayal to be, and also controlling what images of myself goes out. Like, I have very few pictures that I will let people take, and just only those few pictures will circulate, because I don't want too many images of myself. So I think we also have to really put our foots down and exercise our agency and be like, this is how I want to be portrayed. And I think that's possible.
I just quickly want to share when we were talking about the one of the previous conversations we were having, because I remember earlier last year we had an anti-rape protest happening, where there was one protester who had come, who was not any big organizer. She was just attending the protest, and there were different placards being kind of handed around, and she just happened to have a placard which had the Bangla translation of the slogan, "My body, my right." So, and the Bangla translation of that is "Amar shorir, amar siddhanto." And it's just fascinating to me, just like globally, that slogan just really riles people up so much that, there was a lot of slogans calling the state power into question. There was a lot of slogans on various different issues, which were, I think, equally, powerful, equally kind of hitting it where it needed to be hit. But that one really, like, for 6 months, 7 months afterwards, in anti-feminist groups, which are very, very active and very harmful and violent, that photo was just being circulated and circulated with thousands of comments. And that was not because of what she was wearing or, it went to that, but the reason why it attracted all that negative and violent attraction was because of the slogan of "my body, my right." And I just kind of wanted to share that, how, like, that is also part of, like, what gets scrutinized and what is acceptable and not acceptable. Yeah, I think we're nearing the end. Helena, did you want to, was there anybody else that wanted to touch on Helena's question from before?
I mean, I really don't have anything new to add. That's why I was also kind of laying back. So usually I mean, and as I said, like, I've been really lucky generally. Up to now, it's always the first thing I ask. And also in Germany, you have this rule that you have to get authorization. So I guess, but yeah, as I see, like, you can always ask for that, but you'd never know that it's legally binding. But here it's legally binding. So I always ask for beforehand authorization that the codes I would get to see the codes. And I guess the additional challenge that I have to navigate is always because I'm working through the translation, because I'm not a native German speaker. So, but that's why I'm even more diligent about having the codes sent to me, and then I get it translated back. And then, because there's always this even tiny nuances could change the tone and what you mean. And as I said, like, even sometimes also the narrative is even, you could be well-meaning. So I had to deal with also very well-meaning white people who wanted to maybe make me look nicer or more empowered, but by the way of doing it, not me anymore. And that's not exactly what I wanted to say, but they really wanted to put some things in my mouth. So that's kind of then to having to navigate through that. So I guess it's really what already Rubaiyat, Mithu and Nazma said, that's just asking for the authorization, making sure. And also in terms of images, like, I also don't have too many images and outside, and people also somehow always asked for me to, even the ones that are online available, they always revert back. So I guess that's, yeah, so it's really like I seconding what Rubaiyat was saying, taking our own agency and trying to make sure, yeah, we push for that.
Yeah.
I love that you said about the well-meaning ones, because I noticed that too. People want to make you even make your argument stronger, and by that taking away all nuances and stuff. And so it is harder for me when people are well-meaning to say, "I'm sorry, actually."
Yeah. One big ask I have of journalists and just media houses in general is to kind of shift away from the sexualized nature of covering sexual violence, and also the real attraction to victimhood and portrayal of victimhood. If you go through any article on sexual violence, gender-based violence, rape in any of the newspapers, you'll always see the kind of the portrayal of, like, the figure of a very sexualized woman. She's crying, her hands are tied, she's in a very kind of in a very powerless position. And I never see the rage. So many of you today, I heard the rage, I felt the rage when you were speaking. And there's so much rage when we're out there protesting these issues, when we're talking about it in our homes, in our schools, and out in the streets. But that rage is really just, I don't see it anywhere when we're seeing the discussion on this in media. So that's a big ask that I have of journalist friends, that when you write about this, make sure that you represent the rage, and that rage is infectious. And I think that needs to really be highlighted and centered when we talk about these things. And quickly also want to give a shout out to media friends, especially photojournalists who are out there with us, like risking, and many times police brutality, state brutality, and they're just there in the heat for hours from start to finish. So I just want to give a shout out to our media friends as well. Mithu, you want to say something?
I think that is really important. I've written a cultural history of rape, and it came out in 2016. And the reaction that surprised me most, I mean, there was also the racist reaction to it. Oh, isn't it only Muslim man who raped? Because it was at that certain time, and that was the main narrative. But the other reaction was because I was also talking about healing, because I think it's a societal responsibility to talk, how can we make that possible? And I was talking about healing, and that was something that the media had a massive problem with, because that this, oh no, if you talk about healing, then we don't take the issue seriously enough, and maybe then we're not nice enough to victims. So the story was usually, when it was reported about, oh, it is something that breaks the victim forever, and I think that is such a detrimental narrative. So thank you. It can happen to you anytime, and then you'll be broken. And it can be the case, and you've got to respect that, and you've got to respect trauma, but you've also got to respect resilience, and you've also got to respect healing, and you've also got to talk about it, because if you don't talk about it, everybody's got to invent it for themselves. Everybody's got to find it for themselves. So we need these resources of knowledge and to get to them. So in a way, what I want from media is to talk about problems, but also to talk about solutions and best practice models and all this. Because at the moment, and that's because I'm also a journalist, it's very easy to talk what I'm against. I spent the last 5 years writing against AFD, against the new right, against racism, against sexism, whatever. But it's really difficult to find words for where do we want to go to, what are other ways of thinking and talking about things. And usually, and that's with social media, because social media has got this, when you're angry, it's shared more often. So there's this logarithm. So if the angrier posts are not just shared by people, but they're shared by the logarithm itself. And so if you write about nuances, it's shared less. And that's the problem with social media. I can still remember the time when it changed. So when it was chronologically, so I could basically got the next newest post. And now it's, this will interest you most because it's the angriest. No, actually not. And I do think we've got to talk about rage, but we've got to also, after the rage, we've also got to sit down and talk about how can we do it differently. So it belongs together, both sides.
Yeah, I actually love that from all our diverse backgrounds and how the conversation started with the experiences and where we come from, that it ended somehow all together, and we have to put a foot down and take the agency, like control our personal representation, do as much as we can to take this in our hands and not leave it only up to the media. And I think that's a very empowering thought, right? And I think that will support also a lot of people that will watch this and that will face similar issues, because I think we all do. And to be more like, yes, I'm entitled to decide what people publish about me. And yeah, thank you so much. I think that was really inspiring.
Yeah, that was such an interesting conversation. Thank you so much, everybody.